Fear can last longer than punishment. She was 7 months pregnant when her husband handed her a shovel and ordered her to dig. For hours, she dug a pit in the yard of her own home. Later, she would say that she believed she was digging a grave for herself and for the child she was carrying. Then, he forced her inside, covered her with dirt, and left her trapped there for days. But that wasn't the end of her ordeal. The most shocking part of this story didn't happen in that pit. It happened afterward. For nearly 4 years, she told no one. For nearly 4 years, she continued living alongside the man she feared. And when her story finally reached a courtroom, many people were left asking the same question. How could a woman spend longer living in fear than the man responsible spent being punished for it? To understand why, we need to go back to the beginning. They officially married in 2019. Together, they had 3 children. From the outside, they could have looked like any other family. There are thousands of families like theirs, but behind closed doors, life was very different. Arguments, insults, violence. Day after day, she lived beside a man whose mood could change without warning. People often ask a simple question when they hear stories like this. Why didn't she leave? But domestic abuse is rarely that simple, especially when children are involved, especially when fear becomes part of everyday life. By the spring of 2021, she was expecting another child. She was 7 months pregnant. She should have been preparing for a new baby. Instead, she was about to experience something almost impossible to imagine. In early April, her husband came home drunk. After another violent assault, he took her into the yard behind their home. There, he handed her a shovel and ordered her to dig. She was 7 months pregnant. It didn't matter. Hour after hour, she dug into the earth. Later, she would describe it as digging a grave for herself and the child she was carrying. When the work was finished, the nightmare was only beginning. He forced her into the pit. Then, he started covering her with dirt. The soil rose higher and higher until it reached almost to her neck. Then, he placed a car over the pit. The pregnant woman was trapped beneath the ground, unable to escape, unable to move freely, unable to protect herself. The first day passed, then the second, then the third. No food, no water. She could not climb out. She could not raise her arms. Later, she recalled that she could move only her neck. At night, dogs wandered nearby. She could hear them, but she could do nothing. 3 days slowly passed, alone, buried beneath the earth, waiting, not knowing what would happen next. Eventually, her body began to give up. At some point, she lost consciousness. But even after that, the fear did not end. The threats continued. The violence continued. At one point, her husband killed a dog. It was not an act of anger. It was a message, a warning. The meaning was clear. If she refused to obey him, the same thing could happen to her. The most surprising part of this story did not happen in 2021. It happened afterward. She told no one. Not a week later, not a month later, not a year later. Nearly 4 years passed, and the story remained a secret. All that time, she continued living alongside the man she feared. Later, she explained her silence with a single word: fear. Fear for her own life, fear for her children. After the incident, she spent about a month in the hospital, but even then, she did not go to the police. The years passed, and what happened in that yard remained hidden. Almost 4 years later, everything changed. On February 2nd, 2025, after yet another conflict, she finally decided to seek help. An investigation began. The story that had remained hidden for years slowly came to light. What had once been known by only 2 people would now be heard by many more. Eventually, the case reached court. Her husband admitted his guilt and asked the court not to send him to prison. Before the court stood the story of a woman who had been forced to dig her own grave while 7 months pregnant. A woman who spent 3 days without food or water. A woman who could move only her neck while trapped beneath the ground. A woman who then spent nearly 4 years living in fear, unable to tell anyone what had happened. In the end, the court handed down its sentence: 3 years and 3 months in prison. For many people, that number became one of the most disturbing parts of the entire case. Because the woman who endured all of this spent longer living in fear and suffering than the man responsible spent being punished for it. And that is why this story continues to raise questions long after the trial is over. Not only because of what happened in the spring of 2021, but because of what happened afterward.